We have 4 levels of competitors. Okay. Assume the win. That's the lowest. Want to win, will to win, and refuse to lose. John is a refuse to lose guy, right? And the guys that compete at that level, they're never satisfied. They're never, wow, look what I did, coach. I'm this deal. And, come in the building the next day, look at me.
Welcome back or welcome to Y Option, especially all of the new faces and ears, I guess, that are listening to us. I'm your host, Yogi Roth, always joined, of course, by co-founder and executive producer Jim Thornby. And welcome to Rivalry Week Part 2. We had Trent Bray on to kick off the week. Today, we have Jake Dickert, presented by our founding partner, 76. A really thoughtful conversation in advance of the Apple Cup, Jim, and we will dive deep into the Apple Cup. But we've got week 3 on the slate, man. How are you doing? How are you feeling about a rivalry week here in September?
It's good. I mean, it's new to us to have rivalry games this early. Like, it's not even really all that new to you. I mean, you're the backyard brawl. Like, you're used to having this kind of game, early in the season because it's non-conference. We're just not used to Oregon and Oregon State not being in the same conference, Washington State and Washington not being in the same conference, and just how these fan bases are all feeling about the game or starting to change how they're feeling about the game. It seems like the Washington State fan, let's be real here. The Washington State fans were not all of them, obviously. There's, it's a wide swath of emotions on that, but there are a lot of Washington State fans that didn't want to play this game. Like, they're like, why should we play them? And I think now, like, and you'll see Jake will kind of reference this in the interview coming up here, but that they're feeling differently about that. And I think that might mean you might see a heavier contingent of Coug fans at the game than you might normally see at a game of the Apple Cup when it's played in Seattle, since it's not at Husky Stadium.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really, it's going to be a compelling visual come Saturday when you have Oregon State, and at the same time as the Apple Cup. Like, whoever's making these schedules, look, can we just please next year not make them at the same time? Don't make them the same day. Like, just do anything so we can all watch them and enjoy it. You referenced the backyard brawl. Well, in the Big East, we always played Thanksgiving weekend, right? Kind of similar. That was like the first real conference realignment in my experience. I lived through that one. Then all of a sudden it was like, when are you going to play? Where are you going to play? What, oh my God, what conferences are each of us in respectively? But at the end of the day, I go back to, and you could research this, right? At Y Option, we got all the podcasts archived from 9 years ago. Yeah, 9 years ago. This is Mac Brown and I have a conversation maybe 6 years ago. And he said, Yogi, college football is about 2 things. It's about the players and the fans. And now, of course, it's been about the media and the money. But I think when you look at just the game, and if you got to kickoff in Seattle or in Corvallis for these rivalry games, it would just be about the fans and the players once you got to your seats. So I just urge everybody to go, because you only get so many of these games that you get to visit and witness in your lifetime. They only play once a year. We all know what went down, but go support your team, whether it be the Ducks or the Beavs or, of course, the Huskies and or the Cougs. So we'll be locked in. We'll only be able to watch one at a time, but I will do my best to make sure that we watch them all. Yeah. Jim, you need a screen grab to put on Y Option's Instagram, because both is the understatement. I don't know the word for like 12 games at a time. But yeah, your internet can handle it. So,
well, I can't. That's what I figured. Like, when I've got this screen that I am looking at right here as I'm talking to you, when I have 6 games up here, it as each of my little windows open, it seems to do okay. Once I put that 7th game up there, things start to get a little wonky. So I think 6 is the amount that we can handle here. So, right, but those two are locked.
Those two are locked.
Those two will get prime real estate in that 12:30 Pacific time zone.
I love that. All right, quick shout out to Guy Haberman because he taught me about like how he could watch 4 games at once on YouTube TV. So we're a YouTube TV family, at least for the time being. All right, so let's talk about some of these games. We had Trent Bray on earlier in the week. We talked about what was formerly called the Civil War. Today we've got Jake Dickert on talking about what is the Apple Cup. Let's finish with the Apple Cup and let's just bounce around to some other conferences real quick, Jim. USC coming off a 2-0 start, obviously a huge win against LSU. I think it looks really legit coming from the lens of the West Coast. They have a bye, then they go to the big house against a Michigan team that is not on a bye. They play Arkansas State with a bunch of issues offensively I think they have to figure out. But the Bruins right here in my backyard in LA have their first Big Ten game against Indiana, which is fun because Coach Cignetti, he's a Pittsburgh guy. There's a lot of ties there. Tino Sinceri, Mike Shanahan, former Pitt wideout, Pitt quarterback, calling the offense there and coaching the quarterbacks respectively. What do you think about UCLA coming off probably thankfully for them an early bye after a challenging win at Hawaii hosting the Hoosiers?
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I mean, obviously, anytime a team starts the season in Hawaii, it's always a little off kilter. I remember when Arizona started, with Khalil when they started the season there, and like that game, right down to the wire too. So it's like you never feel like you're real, like you kind of have the right footing as you get in there. So I mean, you've been on campus now a couple times since that game. So I'm more curious from your lens, since you're up close and personal here. What have you seen as far as how they're kind of soaking it all in right now?
Yeah, I was just there yesterday and earlier this week, I should probably say. And it was, the energy and the vibe is what you would expect. I think that a lot of times fans, when we watch games, we carry our emotions over to the next week. Players, they can move on. Coaches have to move on, even if it's buried deep within their soul. I think the biggest challenge for this team is going to be, one, what does the offensive line look like? Who's playing tackle? And then I think in the run game, with Deshaun Foster and Eric Bieniemy, we didn't see the run game that I think we will anticipate seeing the rest of this season. And I think on Saturday afternoon on NBC, Todd Blackledge, our good buddy, is going to be calling that game alongside his young partner, Noah Eagle. So really looking forward to watching the broadcast. I don't watch a lot of broadcasts, but Blackledge broadcasts, I always get locked into because I learn a lot from him. I think we'll learn a lot on Saturday about both teams. Here's the interesting thing. And for UCLA, the number one thing for them is they are going up against a team in Indiana that has dramatically struggled in recent years. They have dramatically scored points this year, albeit not against the most talented of opponents. But this team is the definition of effort. They have a variety of starters, major contributors that transferred from JMU, Old Dominion, like smaller schools that didn't get Power 5, let alone Big Ten offers. And now they're playing at the Rose Bowl. Like, put that into context. Like, you and I, we don't take the Rose Bowl for advantage. Like, we don't take it for granted, but we've done it so many times that, like, we walk in and we get the majestic element of it, but it's not our first time. But remember your first time. Remember your first time, right? In anything that you do that's monumental, these young players, they've been thinking about the Rose Bowl and dreaming about it their whole lives, and it was never a reality until it is now. Same thing for Indiana fans. They are going to pack this stadium. Like, don't be shocked. So to the Bruin fans, I know you haven't started school yet, but you better come correct. You got a new student section. It's going to be like Euro soccer, standing only, jumping up and down on the sideline, behind the visitors. It's going to be a new look. It's a new era, clearly, with Deshaun Foster. So I hope people show up and show out for him as an alum leading this program. But I'm going to be glued in to the physicality at the line of scrimmage, especially the O-line, because this defensive front and the linebackers for Indiana, they are going to come from the jump. And I don't anticipate UCLA being stunned. I know that has been a message all week. Like, don't be shocked by the effort across from you. They have to match that, if not exceed that. And then offensively, I think they do have to find ways to get explosive plays. I'm looking forward to watching this receiving core. I think got some talented players on the outside. Ethan Garber's got to have a bounce back game from the first half he had against Hawaii. I think defensively, it'll be fun because, this offense of Indiana will go. They will cook. They're going to spread the ball. They will make life challenging. UCLA defense didn't give up much in the Hawaii game. What are they really going to be like? How can Jay Toya really affect the passer? What's the pressure situation going to be like from a Kaika Malloy? Is he going to crank it up on these guys against a quarterback that can throw it but isn't very mobile? So I'm jacked, man. I want to be with Rhett Lewis. We'll be watching this one. He's a former Indiana wide receiver who's just on the pod a couple weeks ago. We talked about his story. So I think it's a huge moment, honestly, for this season for the Bruins, because they have LSU, Penn State, and Oregon in their next 3 games. And that's going to be a challenging stretch. So can they get to 2 wins will be the goal for them this week.
Yeah,
so
108-10. That's the combined score of Indiana's 2 games so far.
Wow.
108-10. Again,
good research.
Yeah, the opponents, it was FIU, not played at Pitbull Stadium, played in Indiana. So
I like that.
Yeah. So hopefully one time this year we'll have a real discussion about Pitbull Stadium. But today's not that day.
Today's not the day. All right, let's have a real discussion about your Wildcats, because it is a critical game for them. They're undefeated. We know what they have. We've talked about them all offseason about being a favorite in the Big 12. I would not say that right now based on how they have played in their first 2 games. Didn't convert a third down, 0 for 10 last week. They go to K-State. Behind me, I've got every call sheet from every game I've ever called. And in 09, 010, 011, it is full of Kansas State call sheets. That place, the 10 seats, they'll be clacking the whole night long. What are your thoughts about this game with your alma mater?
Well, the first thing that really came to mind, I dug through this last night. I was like, when was the last time Arizona really won a game like this? Non-conference game against a team from a real conference on the road. And I started looking back, and the last time they won a non-conference road game against a current Power 5 school was 2000 at Utah. But at that time, Utah was still in the Mountain West. So I was like, okay, so now we got to go a little further back. And then I looked back, and the last time it was against a team, a road win at a true Power 5 conference team was 1994 at Georgia Tech. I was a sophomore in Arizona at that point. I still vividly remember watching that game in my apartment, Varsity Village, which I don't even know what it's called anymore, but it's not called Varsity Village anymore. I know that, but I can remember the freshman sensation out of Tucson, Kevin Schmidtke, with the game-winning touchdown run in like the last minute or whatever like that, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, Schmidtke's going to be amazing." Turned out his career was just okay, but I have vivid memories of that. And when I going through all the games last night and realized that was the last time they won a game like this, I was like, wow. But I mean, the one thing that you're going to see is, like, are they going to be able to get the ball to T-Mac like they were in week 1? I mean, week 1, it was just like, anytime you want to get the ball to him, you got it to him, and it was a boom, explosive play, touchdown, whatever. Last week was not the case. I don't know if there was, what the situation was, if they were trying to more spread that ball around to try and get the other guys involved because they know they're going to need them come the rest of this season. But him getting a 2-catch game is probably not going to cut it in Manhattan, Kansas.
Ready, set, dream cabin nestled in the woods. Just 4 hours to go. New job halfway across the country. Butterflies before a first date. Wherever you go, 76 fuels all the ways you go, go, go.
Yeah, and that's going to be obviously the goal. He's been circled all week long by that defense. I think this is the sneaky game of the week in all of college football. And I say that because I think you got 2 of the most dynamic quarterbacks in Avery Johnson and Noah Fafita going head-to-head. I hope it's a shootout. I hope we get one of those types of games that can be kind of crazy. The Big 12 is known for that. The Pac-12 is known for that. It's, of course, after the sun has set, so it'll be Big 12 after dark, even though it's a non-conference game. Like, all that
we don't use that term. We don't use those terms.
We don't. Just so you know, with the origin of that thing, okay? Yeah. But I hope it is that. And I want nothing more than that to happen. I think there's one positive that I'll say for Arizona that you didn't reference. Week 1, struggled on defense, cleaned it up. Week 2, struggled on offense. I think they'll clean that up. And it's a veteran team. And I think when you have a veteran team and it's led by guys that have been there, done that, it can only serve you well, especially if you have a ton of hype and you struggle. That's what I am looking forward to watching. I will be watching that on Friday night, which will be after the Thursday night game. Now, the
Yeah.
Thursday night game is going
That's
to be
a
even
sneaky
more
one.
interesting. That is a sneaky one, too. You're exactly right. All right, you take it away because there's storylines for days here.
Yeah, because it's like, I think to just the Joe Schmo college football fan, you're just like, oh, they're playing Texas State. Okay, whatever. Texas State is not some just rinky-dink team. I mean, this is going to be a matchup. Two of the youngest coaches in college football, two mad geniuses going head to head. And for a Pac-12 or an Arizona fan, you're going to look across and be like, oh, I recognize that quarterback at Texas State, Jordan McLeod. So Texas State is a legitimately good team. Kenny Dillingham has really made sure to remind everybody all week that he knows that this is a really good team. They have a lot of returning starters. They were really successful. There was a lot of people. I remember seeing in a lot of people's preseason predictions that this was going to be the Group of 5 team that goes to the playoffs this year. So, I mean, do not sleep on Texas State. If Arizona State is able to go there on the road on a Thursday night and pull up a win, that is a good win.
Agreed. Okay, so just because it's compelling, number one, there was a world where Jaden DeLauro was starting at quarterback in this game against Arizona State. He had transferred there and then decided to pursue his professional career for a variety of reasons. Jordan McLeod, I know you remember this, but I just can't get out of him starting in Eugene against Oregon in 2021. And then he was at JMU, which the aforementioned Curt Cignetti was the head coach at, and he was player of the year in that league. And now he's at Texas State. So anything can happen in your college career. One thing that is guaranteed to happen is that it will not go exactly as you planned, because I think he began his career at, was it South Florida?
Yeah.
South Florida. Yeah. So here he is on another school. He was awesome when we got to be around him. It'll be a shootout. I think for their head coach you referenced at Texas State, he is an up and coming head coach. There were a few Power 5 head coaches that had called me about him in recent years and said, hey, do you think he'd come to be my OC? We've seen guys dip from from non-Power 5 head coaching jobs to coordinator jobs. Look no further than USC and Matt Entz, North Dakota State head coach. And now he's coaching linebacker, assistant head coach. I think he's got a variety of really fun titles, but we've seen that. I don't think that's going to be the case anymore with G.J. Kinney. I think that he's going to be on the short list for a lot of big jobs, especially in the state of Texas over the course of the next couple of years, as they naturally will open up, because the pressure in the state of Texas is always ridiculous, as the environment will be as well. So Kenny Dillingham, this is the challenge. Can your team meet the moment and be the mature road team, run the rock with our reigning, that dude, player of the week in Cam Skattebo. Cam, congratulations once again. Okay, let's go to Utah. Utah State. Called Utah State SC over the weekend. Bryson Barnes is the starter. We'll see what happens this week if he is the starter again. We know that he used to play at Utah. We know what he did at Utah, the pig farmer, etc. But that is not the story. It would have been probably if Cam Rising was healthy. But we don't know if Cam Rising is healthy. Jim, what is the latest you think in advance of this one?
Again, I mean, it's one of those things where, Kyle doesn't really talk about injuries unless they're season ending. But just some of the stuff I've seen from the Utah reporters who've done or always do a great job. It makes it seem like this might not be the game that Cam plays in. Now, this is an in-state rivalry. They haven't played since 2015, but those games in the early Pac-12 network years of Utah State, those were close games. I mean, the last two Utah won, the one in 2012 with when Utah State had Chucky Keaton. They pulled off
that one.
They pulled off the one there. Now this is not your Chucky Keaton Utah State squad as you saw last week. So I don't know, but hopefully the Utes are able to kind of pull that energy together like they did more in the fourth quarter last week than they did in the third. Because if they play like they did in the third quarter, this is not going to be a fun game for Utah fans.
Okay, so quick one for Utah fans. Here's the thing that I think I'll be most curious about for Utah State. They did not run their traditional offense against USC. Their offense is up-tempo, spread it, get after it. As quickly and as efficiently as you can, you want to snap the ball. They did the exact opposite against USC. What do they do in this game? Do they think if Cam Rising, to your point, is not playing, is it time to cut it absolutely loose and play your style? And does that mean quarterback run game, right? They got a long season. This team was picked in the middle of the pack in the Mountain West. I think they got enough talent to compete in that league. So that'll be a decision that they're going to have to figure out over the course, obviously, of the week and as we get closer to game day. Defensively, they played a coverage against SC where they were just like no explosive plays. They didn't want to get anybody behind them. What do they do in this game? Do they try to get after? Is it Isaac Wilson? Do they get after him? Do they say, hey, let's play his little man coverage? Let's change things up. I don't know what Coach Dryling's going to do, but I'll be locked in on this game because it's got a sneaky upset alert. It's going to be a lot of intrigue around this game. I expect Utah to win, expect them to be more mature, but young quarterback can't turn it over. They have to run the football. So speaking of running the football, Colorado did not do a lot of that. They're playing Colorado State, who will not run from this rivalry. We saw that a year ago. Everybody stayed up. It was like the greatest viewed game in the history of Colorado football, I feel like, and probably every week trumped that in some fashion. This one is at Colorado State. It's a late afternoon game. It's a CBS game. Shiloh Sanders out for a couple weeks. Shedeur Sanders, we know how tough he is, the talent that he is. How does this team navigate this on the road? My feeling, Jim, is that it's great to go on the road after a loss. Like they just got drilled by Nebraska. I'm calling the Nebraska game this weekend. I've watched it a few times. They had no shot. They struggled protecting in this game, point blank. I don't care what happened in the second half. They just struggled against this defense. I'd imagine Colorado State's going to blitz 70% of the time. I would in this game. The challenge will be, this is the thing with all the new faces. This, to me, is what head coaches do. This is about bringing a team together. Two things win games. I don't care how talented the roster is. It's, do you have a culture and do you have chemistry? You have to have those things. It's the ultimate team game. Ask Northern Illinois. Ask Notre Dame over the weekend. Ask Idaho and what they almost did in week 1 and what they did against Wyoming in week 2. Like, I just think that those things are critical. And that's going to be the question. How connected can this team be? I think they'll answer the bell. I want them to answer the bell. I've always gone on record. I'm enthused by what Dion has done there. It's been great for the university, but there's so much vitriol right now. Like, they need a win. They need a win, I think, just to take a breath. Because if not, here comes conference play. If they lose this one, we've seen this show before. Like, it could get off the rails quickly. I hope it doesn't. But I think we'll get a classic. What are your thoughts on this rivalry?
Well, I want to see, to your point, and I think, the Shiloh Sanders injury, if you remember last year's game, like the first score was the pick 6 from him. And like that really kind of, that place, the stadium was already electric, and then he kind of like lit the fuse on that, and so.
Was that after Little Wayne or before Little Wayne? I don't remember. Because that was,
I don't know. The Rock was there. Like, it was, the whole 9 yards there. But Colorado State, not sure if their star receiver is gonna play in this game. So that's obviously gonna be a big concern.
Travis
for them.
Hunter might not play.
No. Colorado State.
Oh, Colorado State. Okay, all right.
And I'm spacing on his name here, but he was great in the game last year. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, just because that was as intense a game as they had all year last year. Like they were both like coming for it. So it'll be interesting to see if the teams are dialing it down. It seemed like there was, even this week in the media, people were trying to like poke the bear a little bit to try and get whatever, and people mostly, I think, diffused all that stuff. But once it's on the field, it'll be interesting to see how everybody's able to keep that under control.
Yeah, I think safe to say that everyone will be tuning into the Jay Norvell Coaches Show this week after what happened last year. So to that point, let's go to our final conference roundup of the week before we get out and back to the Apple Cup with Jake Dickert, our conversation from today. Stanford is on a bye. Then they go to Syracuse next week, which is just weird because like you literally couldn't get any further apart.
And a Friday night game at that.
There we go. Here we go. Bring the tutors, get the homework done. And I hope they get win number 2 of the season. Always cheering for them. And Syracuse, what a really cool story for them. Their quarterback transfer from Ohio State. We'll talk more about that next week. But how about Cal? I'm wearing my JG Jared Goff t-shirt today in honor of Fernando Mendoza and the air quotes, one of the greatest pressures we've ever seen in 36 seconds or whatever it was. Go to Y Options Twitter handle. We have retweeted that because it's absolutely amazing. They host San Diego State in a trap game to me. They just beat the brakes off of Auburn. We put it out on social. I did as well. Stop calling it an embarrassing loss to those in Alabama. When you look at and watch the game, you just got beat by the better team. Not emotional, not the West Coast guy, just trying to give it to you from the lens of the West Coast. That's the reality. South Bend, you could be embarrassed by that. You should have won that ball game. Not the case in Auburn when they went down to the Cal Bears. Fernando Mendoza isn't turning the ball over. He's playing with tremendous efficiency. And I'd vote for this guy. I'd vote for this guy for anything he wanted in life, Jim. I think the Cal Bears have a chance to be undefeated when Miami and Mario Cristobal come to town. We said that last week. We'll say it again. Fernando and he went to the same high school, which is just a fun story when you pull out the yearbooks. I'm sure whoever's calling that game, do it. Take that idea from us and run with it. But what do you think? Do you think this is a letdown game for them? Do you think the crowd is going to be bonkers? This is kind of taken place of the weekender, they used to call that. When SC would go up to Cal, everybody would drive up the 101 for the weekend. It'd be a great party. You go to the game, it'd be sold out. I called that game last year with Ted Robinson. It was a blast. This is kind of the JV version of that to a degree, with San Diego State being in San Diego, going up to Cal with a freshman quarterback. We know all about their head coaches, or their head coach. We're a big fan of him coming over from Colorado. Now, of course, the head coach of San Diego State. But what do you make of this one?
Yeah, it's funny because I think, this summer when you were interviewing Brent Brennan, I think he said the most overused term is culture. I think the most overused term in college football for me is trap game. But
they're true though. It's kind of true.
This one I kind of see. I mean, this one you're coming off that huge win in SEC country. Like, you're probably feeling yourself a little bit. San Diego State just got shut out by the Beavers last week. They got to be, have a chip on their shoulder. So through all the realignment stuff where, this Cal and San Diego State almost were in the same conference, how this all came out. So there's probably chips on chips on chips on San Diego State's shoulders for this game. So again, I hate using that term, but in this one, I think that's an accurate statement.
Yeah, I support the distaste for that term, but there's some terms that have just been proven true time and time again. And I think that's the case here. I don't think it'll happen in this game. I do think there'll be a lot of positives this weekend for San Diego State and their program. And one is just the competitive temperament that they have with their new head coach and with the new look of the team. And I think the future is really bright there. Same thing for Justin Wilcox and Cal. And I'll say it again. We said it earlier in the week. Administration at Cal, give this program the resources to compete with the big dogs in college football, and look out, because they'll be able to do it. They've proven to do it schematically and even talent against a team from the vaunted SEC. And I think they'll continue to do it, especially in the league you're in currently. They got a chance to make a little bit of noise in the ACC. All right, so let's swing it on back to the Pac-12. And I just laugh a little bit to myself because I think about Cal in that stadium, and I'm looking at the Pacific, yet they're in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Still, I think that's the ultimate line. But with that said, we got the Apple Cup. We have Jake Dickert today. Jim, my biggest takeaway from the conversation with Jake Dickert is this. Last year, Jake Dickert has said, let me rephrase. Last year, he often made it about proving everybody wrong. We're a power team. It just felt like it was them against the world. It was Cougs versus everybody. He made, in my eyes, a philosophical shift of not making about that and really about blocking out distraction, not welcoming distraction, using it as fuel. I think that's going to benefit his team in this game. We've been calling the Cougs America's team all off season long. Check us out on social media and join the party. I think they got a shot to do that on a grand stage. Now, granted, it's going to be on Peacock, so hopefully people are locked in and tuned into that from the fan base's perspective and really from the nation's perspective. I hope so, because I think you're in for a treat. And this is their opportunity. Like, if there's a time to get UW in the new look Washington with Jedd Fisch, this is the game. This is the year with your quarterback, with the quarterback run game, with your defense and the way they're getting after people in the backfield. Like, this is the opportunity, Jim. And I think they have a great opportunity to make a massive statement, because they win this game. Whew. I mean, the juice around this program, I think, is only going to go to a level we haven't seen in quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, and something's got to give. I mean, the Cougs have scored 107 points these first two games. UW, not allowed a touchdown. So, I mean, this, you couldn't be more diametrically opposed with the way things have gone for those two teams. And again, I mean, it's two games. It's the opponents that they've played. Obviously, with Wazoo playing Texas Tech, that's a pretty good opponent, when it comes down to it. But we're gonna really see what we have from these two teams when they lock up with each other. I mean, we're used to being this being the conference game at the end of the year, where you're really kind of putting the cherry on top of the sundae of your season. But this is it's gonna be intense, and it's gonna be a chance for each of them to prove who they are.
Yeah. Two things to look for in this game. Jonah Coleman, if they can run the football for Washington, they'll have a chance to go and win the Apple Cup and keep that in Seattle. If they can't, or if they struggle running the football, I am so curious to watch this passing game get unleashed, because it hasn't had to be unleashed in the first two games of the season. We know Jedd Fisch and Brendan Carroll, they're always going to scheme it up with Jimmy Doherty. Like, they are going to have great stuff. So that balance against Jake Dickert and his defensive staff, I look forward to watching that. And then on the flip side, think about it. It just hit me. You have Ben Arbuckle, who only a few years ago was coaching high school football. And you have Steve Belichick, who over the last few years was coaching NFL football. Like, think about that for a minute. You got an air raid foundation, spread offense, and you've got this NFL-style defense that hasn't allowed a touchdown, to your point. It is awesome. I mean, it has so much for the crew call in this game to talk through, to celebrate, to project out. I mean, this game almost calls itself based on the rivalry, and then you add in some of the dynamics. Whew, it's going to be special. The guy we talked to today knows it is special because it changed his life. 2021, he is the interim head coach in Jake Dickert. They go to Seattle, and they put it all over UW, including a flag in the middle of that field. We all remember that moment. So we had Jake Dickert on today, brought to you by our founding partner, 76. So Coug fans, take a listen to your head coach, Jake Dickert, in advance of this year's Apple Cup. All right, Coach, it's the 116th Apple Cup, like one of the most historic rivalries in the history of sport. We're going to get into your first one and a very monumental one in your career in a minute, but I want to know, like, when did you first hear about this rivalry? I mean, you've been a fan of the sport of college football for as long as I'd imagine you could remember, but when did the Apple Cup come calling into your mind?
Man, like I said, even growing up in Midwest, I mean, you knew about Wazoo, you knew about the, Rose Bowl, Big Ten, Pac-12, obviously playing on Friday nights, you could see it a little bit more. And obviously, as I worked my way slowly throughout my career out west, and then obviously landing here, just understand about what the Apple Cup and what it means, and then being a part of them now. I mean, it's as good a rivalry, Yogi, as I've been a part of. And I go back to UW Stevens Point, Oshkosh. I go back to North Dakota, South Dakota State for the Dakota marker. Wyoming, CSU for the bronze boot. I've had a couple beers out of the boot, 3-0, right? Then obviously the Apple Cup, the passion, the pageantry, it's everything as advertised.
Amen. I remember Lackawanna Trail in Lakeland, which all 100 people listening to this podcast remember in high school, Pennsylvania, and as a kid. But you're right. There's something special to rivalries, and they're memorable. They could be momentous. For you, you could argue it was life-changing. Yeah. What do you recall of 2021 and the romp you guys had in Seattle over UW?
I said this the other day because somebody asked me. It's a football core memory that I'll never forget. And not for the win. I don't even remember the score. I know we won by the largest margin of victory of Washington State history, right, of that game. but it was the moment for the players. It was the moment for pure exhaustion of 6 weeks being the head coach, trying to keep it afloat, being the DC, having staff members that just got here, losing other guys, and the bonds that were created during that 6-game run of the 2021 WSU football team will never be forgotten. And I'm so grateful for those players to stay together and to just get behind what I was trying to say and do at that time, and just to see their joy of breaking the 7-year streak, those seniors that meant so much to our program that really took Washington State football to a whole new level, under Coach Leach. And we were, just so honored to continue that on. Because I remember being in the locker room and our equipment guys are like, we got to get these guys off the field. We got to leave. I said, hell no, leave them out there. All right, we'll get them in when they get them in. And, Jahad Woods works for us. George Hicks worked for us. Got to see Liam Ryan at the game just last week. Those guys still talk about that one moment just being unbelievable, Dallas Hobbs. So, there was big, and I almost tear up a little bit thinking about just putting myself back into that moment, and obviously the great news that came from winning that game to allow me to be the head coach here at Washington State.
I got to imagine Max Borghi's timeline on his social media account is going to be full of some pretty good highlights this week from that game. We know he's a great follow. You and I have jokingly talked about this, but I think you've got a great book at some point. Happy to offer up my services, Coach, if you need a co-author on this thing, because I don't know what chapter it's in, whether it's the 2021 game and shortly thereafter Pat Chun says, come be the head coach, or this game where he's going to be on the other sideline. Have you even put into context your career and the unique, maybe people have one of these in their career. You've had so many in 4 years.
Yeah, it's been obviously a unique situation. I do, when everyone does ask me, Yogi, I always say it has been my opportunity to live out what I have been preaching to the players. Adversity is life's greatest teacher. You are who you say you are as a character and a man when things don't go your way. We haven't had anything go our way. And we just keep plugging away and trying to find a way to do it our own way. And I think that represents kind of the nature of how I was raised. Small town Wisconsin, we had 27 kids in my graduating class. You better be pretty tough when you have 9 boys that kind of field the varsity football team. But to come out here on the Palouse, to say these are our people, the hardworking, tough, blue collar, and to represent them through all these struggles too, because I know what's on their heart. I know what's on their mind. I feel it. I see it. How this has transpired and affected our community. I understand all those things. So to be able to represent them and to also go into this game where, there is a lot of emotion tied to this game, rightfully so. And I don't care whatever side, you didn't want this game to be played. You knew it needed to, whatever side you're on, show up, be loud, support the Cougs, because these players want to represent Washington State.
So how do you talk to the players right now? Because you referenced the emotion, clearly there's a lot that's gone on, whether it's realignment, conference changes, debate over where should the game be played, etc. How do you talk to the guys that will actually compete on Saturday?
Well, I think there's a duality to my role. I mean, my number one job, I tell our guys all the time, is to make sure our guys are elite high performers. All right. And one of the biggest things to be a high performer, Yogi, is controlling your environment and eliminating things that don't matter. Right. So I teach them about that. And it isn't just this week. I mean, we spent fall camp, working on, how do you control your environment? What's your social media reactions? To families, to agents, to all these things these guys deal with now are real. But the one thing that matters to a high performer is being in the present, in that one moment, and being in that moment every moment, right? Because we talk about playing present and being in the now. The louder the game gets, the bigger the perception of everything gets, the more you need to double down on doing the little things. Our theme last week was do simple better. That we're playing a mirror image of ourselves, and if we could be blocked better than they could be blocked at the O-line, we're going to win. If we can communicate better than they can communicate on defense, we're going to win. And still feel the same way this week. If you're all fire and brimstone and toughness and no technique, you're going to get beat. So it still comes down to those moments of execution, and that's how we win this game.
It's so hard to replicate a game in practice. Everybody tries, but it's just different, especially I think at the quarterback position. Yeah. Here comes John Mateer, most rushing yards in the history of a Wazoo quarterback, right? Here's a guy who is the 119th ranked quarterback in his class. And look at what he is doing. Thank you, Jim Thornby, for the research on that, man.
That's good.
How do you talk to him? How do you talk to players about performance anxiety? And getting excited is a good thing, but to your point, execution is the main thing.
Yeah, a couple different things. If you're worried about the past, fear is in the past, right? My past failures, or I didn't do something right. Or if you're worried about the future, anxiety lives in the future, right? So, like I said, come back to being present. And John's approach is unique. I just talked to him this week about staying humble, staying hungry, right? John is edgy by nature. John is ultra competitive by nature, and that's great. We're going to feed into that because that is his strengths. But he is also the ultimate competitor, right? We have 4 levels of competitors, okay? Assume the win, that's the lowest. Want to win, will to win, and refuse to lose. John is a refuse to lose guy, right? And the guys that compete at that level, they're never satisfied. They're never, wow, look what I did, coach. I'm this deal. And, come in the building the next day, look at me. Like, he's like, I need to play better. I need to get this passing game going. I need to hit Kyle Williams here. I missed him. So when you're that refuse to lose competitor, you just keep your eye on where you're going. And, the one thing I said when we named John is that every time we put him out there, he's going to keep getting better, right? Because of who he is. And that's the expectation going from week 2 to week 3, just like he did week 1 to week 2.
How, when you look at your roster, the construction of it, how many guys are in that refuse to lose? Is that something I'd imagine that you just continuously harping on it? And how have you seen it impact this team midweek of the Apple Cup?
Yeah, we rank these guys. We call it our core score. Okay, so our core values are trust, discipline, love, and competition. So they get a core score from their coaches. And what that does is, like, if your core score is different than what your coach is, we need to have a conversation. So the more, it's the 10-80-10 rule. If you ever read Twin Thief Steve Jones, like 10% of your team is going to do everything you say. There's always a bottom 10% that's going to weigh, down. And then there's a battle for that 80%, right? And the elite guys, the leaders, the voices of the team, that top 10% need to pull everybody up with them. So the more guys that we can get that refuse to lose, because at times, those want to win guys that say they want to win but don't show up at practice, right? The want to win guy that says they want to win and doesn't eat right, sleep right, train right, or only does things in the 20 hours we get, you can't win with a lot of those guys. So that's what I love, that this roster's been 95% recruited by us. They know what it means to stay here, and the more we get in those upper levels, the more we'll continue to win.
I'm stealing that from my flag football team coach. Just so you know,
Yeah.
The 9-year-olds in LA, look out, it's coming.
They need it.
I read a quote from you regarding this game and the opponent, and you talked about UW and the offense and defensive lines. And then I read a quote from one of your players, and it was, we like to say, sacrifice the body, glorify the soul, all in the name of points or all in the name of John Mateer. It was amazing. But take us into that key element in this ball game and the rivalry.
Oh, I think it's the number one thing I learned from last year, Yogi, is that we need to be more physical and dominant at the line of scrimmage. And, this has been a 3-year journey since I've been the head coach to remake this offensive line. And we need to take the next step. We've taken 2 really good steps so far. But the one biggest thing from this UW team is the attacking nature on defense. It's a whole different animal. The Bear, how they create one-on-one matchups almost every play. It comes from different angles, different levels of the defense, the simulated pressures. So they're going to stay on the attack. And once again, you can keep your quarterback upright. You can establish a run game and stay ahead of the chains. That starts with the offensive line. We will be in really good positions offensively. And then, vice versa, defensive line, we got to make their quarterback uncomfortable. When he's comfortable and he's going through his read progressions, he's as good as there is in college football. So that will be where the game is won. Those guys know that. And to glorifying the soul, it's ugly, it's nasty, it's dirty. That's what he means by that. Dev has a saying, because Devin Kalani said that, we're the only, people in sport that aren't looking at the ball, right? Offensive linemen. So the trust of 5 guys playing as one, when you don't know what's happening behind you, there's a whole nother level to that type of mentality.
We don't have all linemen on our flag team, Coach, but they might have to just hear that
That's right.
speech
That's
anyway. Right. Last two before we cut you loose here, Coach. When you look at this game and the location of it, right? It's going to be in Lumen Field where the Seahawks play. You guys have a big fan base in Seattle, a huge alumni base in Seattle. Obviously, it's UW's home city. What have you heard, if you've heard anything from Coug fans? What do you anticipate this environment being? Because it seems to be a unique one amid a rivalry that's usually in one of the other's home stadiums.
I think it's a unique opportunity. That's what I will say. Haven't had a lot of good news as far as attendance numbers, and I'm just going to be honest. And it's an opportunity for us as Cougs, however you sit on the rivalry line. You didn't want it to happen. You're thankful it is. It's an opportunity for us to do what we say. I've read a lot in the last calendar year about us being upset. That does nothing. Showing up, investing, that's what matters. So we get an opportunity. And I'm going to wait until Saturday after the game. We'll see what it means. But in college football, the margins to win are so small.
I appreciate the time, Coach. Best of luck this weekend, and I can't wait to tune into this one. It's a classic rivalry. It's the Afterglow. Jim Thornby, Yogi Roth. That was Jake Dickert, presented by our founding partner, 76. Go, go, go. Make sure you tune into our Go, Go, Go awards this weekend based on Week 3's performances. But, Jim, what did you think of that conversation from Coach Dickert in advance of the Apple Cup?
It's great. I mean, I think I need to find out what my core score is here so I can kind of, figure out my level of competitiveness. Not that I'm pretending that I'm ever going to get on the field there, but just, as we do this, we are competing to be as best as we can here. But Jake is great. Thankful for his, the time he gave us. And, he's done a really good job, especially with all the curveballs that have been thrown their way the last several years.
Yeah, he's so impressive to me, and I think I've always loved when first-time head coaches get jobs because we get to watch them evolve as head coaches, right? Defensive-minded coach, of course, and then you look at how he's really become the CEO of that program, and really he's the face of that entire university, right? Pat Chun left to go become the athletic director at Washington. We talked to him about that. Kirk Schultz, the president, is going to be departing later on, I think late next year. So to that point, like Jake Dickert's been the face of this whole thing amid realignment, amid the changes in college football, and he's been really steady. And I think that is something that every coach can learn from and take from, because I don't think many coaches have gone through what Jake Dickert has gone through. I mean, there's been so many elements. He joked about writing his book. Whenever he chooses to do it, it's going to be a bestseller, man, because there's just so much stuff that went on. I know that he hopes that the wins trump the off the field things, and I think they have a chance to do that. So we'll be locked into that one this weekend. The other one I know Jim Thornby will be locked into, dueling screens, of course, is what was known formerly as the Civil War. Oregon State. Oregon, check out Trent Bray, the head coach of the Beavs. We had him on earlier in the week. Jim, what do you think about this game as we enter the weekend?
I think the one thing that I'm really going to pay attention to, and I think it'll be fairly evident, is just the Oregon's ability to get explosive plays against this Oregon State defense. Through the first 2 games, and again, obviously small sample size, they've only allowed 3 plays of 20 plus yards. When we watched that Oregon game against Boise, the explosive plays are what won that game for the Ducks. Without the explosive plays, they don't win that game. I mean, they had 4 touchdowns on explosive plays, including 2 of them on special teams. And then the 5th touchdown was set up by an explosive play. So we have yet to really see that them put together a methodical drive like that, at least in the Boise game. We didn't see them put together a methodical drive to really get down the field and put up some points. So that's the one angle I really want to, or I mean, I think probably everybody's going to keep their. It's not just me. I think everybody's going to be keeping their eyes on to see, how that Ducks offense is able to operate.
Yeah, I got a feeling that the producer of that game is a guy named Bo Garrett. I've known since I was 19 years old. I can imagine early in the game they're going to be showing flashbacks from those highlight plays. And then for Oregon State, they're traditionally a very aggressive man-to-man coverage defense. So do they adjust? Do they play coverage and say, we want you to run the ball on us with an offensive line that's been in flux? Or do they say, no, we're going to play our style and we're going to force you to throw it deep? If so, Will Stein's going to throw it deep. And then how do you play the ball? How many PIs do we see called? There's a lot of elements. I think if I was at this game, the number one thing I would do is I would just take it in. Take in the environment, because it is going to be raucous, to say the least. I got to imagine, pending what's going on in the Apple Cup and vice versa, like those two stadiums are just going to be flashing those scores like throughout the ball game. So if you see anything at those games, tag Y Option on any of our social platforms so we can see it as well. Jim will be watching it. I'm going to be in Lincoln, Nebraska. I haven't been there since 2008 when I was coaching at SC. Went and watched that game back. It was Musburger, Herb Street. I mean, it was an awesome game. It was a tight game. And then all of a sudden we blow it open and win by 30 or something, 40 or something like that. And after the game, because I know we love stories here, Keanu Reeves is in the locker room. He flew up day of the game. And I'll never forget being like this young 20-something coach, of course, quoting Keanu, as did all of the coaches, because we were so excited after the game, just screaming it in the locker room. So there it is. There's my story from Lincoln. I'll have
Johnny Utah, right?
Johnny Utah was
Utah.
definitely
Give me
line.
2.
Yeah, get off my wave. I mean, there was a lot of lines that were shouted out from the likes of our coaching staff. Most of them were pretty young. You can imagine who.
How did he handle that?
He loved it. Oh yeah. The player. I mean, he's such a shy, humble guy.
Right. Exactly. That's what I was curious.
He's just that I've been able to be around him a little bit. We have a mutual friend, and he's everything you'd hope. Like super down to earth. Big sports fan. He's helped out a bunch of teams in the past. Texas last year in advance of their semifinal game against UW. He voiced over a track for their pregame video. They showed the team, which is pretty cool because their season was based on John Wick, let alone way back in the day when we were at SC and visiting in Lincoln. So I'm going to hop on a plane. I'm going to go visit Lincoln, Nebraska for the first time in quite some time. Jim, take a breath. I know you got a lot going on. It's been an aggressive week. It's rivalry week. Our bodies aren't ready for that, but we jumped right into it. Oregon State coverage, no better place than here. Washington State coverage, no better place. And, of course, college football through the lens of the West Coast. I think you're going to like some of the features we're going to continue to roll out here slowly and surely as conference play continues to creep up on us. So stay safe. Enjoy the game. Send your picks. Tag Y Option. And can't wait to talk next week. Peace.